Hi, my name is Skylar McKay, and I'm going to be covering the topic labeling, which is a technique leveraged in Chris Voss's famous book, Never Split the Difference. So just a reminder, Chris Voss was a former top FBI hostage negotiator, and he explained certain techniques that the FBI actually uses to obtain critical information that you can use during a consultation process. And one of the techniques, and I think this is one of the bigger techniques discussed in the book, is labeling. So labeling is a form of basically you're labeling the other party's emotions. So it is really important to use calibrated questions, right, during the discovery process. And what you want to do is you want to get a sense of the emotion that they're actually feeling and that could be behind a potential problem that they might be dealing with, right? And then you want to label that emotion to make it real. What it does is it builds rapport, it builds trust, and it gets them to explain a little bit further what they're feeling about the solution. And it's a great segue, especially into a presentation, right? So you label the pain, the frustration that they're dealing with, and it's an easy segue into getting further critical data. Now, Chris Voss was huge with talking about tactical empathy. Now, this is a form of tactical empathy. Um, it's very frustrating, right, to be on the other side of the fence when you feel like you're not being listened to. And this is a great way, like I said, to build that rapport. So I want to start first. I want to make this real because I know labeling can sound really confusing as far as like how to leverage it, and I want to make this as real as possible. So I'm going to read this passage out of his book, and it talks about a scenario, just like my previous video with mirroring. Chris Voss explains a hostage negotiation situation where he leverages labeling. And I think it's a great example. And then I'm also going to allude into the actual definition of labeling. Okay. So for 6 straight hours in the Swilling apartment building hallway, the two FBI negotiating students and I took turns speaking. We rotated in order to avoid verbal stumbles and other errors caused by tiredness. And we stayed relentlessly on message, all three of us saying the same thing. Now pay close attention to exactly what we said. It looks like you don't want to come out. It seems like you worry that if you open the door, we'll come out with guns blazing. It looks like you don't want to go back to jail. That is labeling. He's labeling the emotions that these people that are holding up this apartment building are probably feeling because they have not given anybody an answer for 6 hours straight, right? So he's assuming that they might be frightened. We employed our tactical empathy by recognizing and then verbalizing the predictive emotions of the situation. We didn't just put ourselves in the fugitive's shoes. We spotted their feelings, turned them into words, and then very calmly and respectfully repeated their emotions back to them. In a negotiation, that's called labeling. Labeling is a way of validating someone's emotion by acknowledging it, give someone's emotion a name, and you show you identify with how that person feels. It gets you close to someone without asking about external factors you know nothing about. Example of that would be, how's your family? Think of labeling as a shortcut to intimacy, a time-saving emotional hack. Labeling has a special advantage when your counterpart is tense, exposing negative thoughts to daylight. It looks like you don't want to go back to jail, makes them seem less frightening. In one brain imaging study, psychology professor Matthew Lieberman of the University of California, Los Angeles, found that when people are shown photos of faces expressing strong emotion, the brain shows greater activity, the part that generates fear. But when they are asked to label the emotion, the activity moves to the areas that govern rational thinking. In other words, labeling an emotion, applying rational words to fear, disrupts its raw intensity. Labeling is a simple, versatile skill that lets you reinforce a good aspect of the negotiation or diffuse a negative one. So there's positive labeling and negative labeling, but it has very specific rules about form and delivery. Okay, so it's huge that you use voice inflection. So there's 3 words typically that you start with when you're doing an appropriate label. I want to go over those with you. That could be it seems like, it sounds like, it looks like. So it sounds like you may feel that pricing is a little bit more important than results. That's an example, right? But you want to emphasize that. It seems that, and you want to talk slow and have a calm demeanor. It's all about the delivery, right? Because you can easily sound unnatural with it, right? Just like mirroring, all right? Um, for most people, it's one of the most awkward negotiation tools to use, but they try it before they try it the first time. My students always tell me they expect their counterpart to jump up and shout, "Don't you dare tell me how I feel." Let me in, let me let you in on a secret. People never even notice. The first step to labeling is detecting the other person's emotional state. So that is, you can use certain calibrated questions, right, to get them to open up about their feelings, right? So you may be familiar with some of my previous videos with buying motive. That's a way to get their emotions out of a situation. So, for example, it's critical to understand buying motive, right? Because you want to make your perceived value 10 times greater. You want the outcome 10 times greater than what the perceived value is, right? Of whatever you're offering, right? Because you want to show them how great it is on the other side of the fence working with you. So you want to understand the problems that they're dealing with. And then if you get the problems, you can listen for certain tones and their voice to get a feel for what the emotion is behind that problem. And then you label it. And then now you can segue into your presentation. So for example, after you've labeled their emotion, you can say something like this. Um, would it interest you if I show you where our top clients in your industry how they structure this? I mean, to see phenomenal success, right? Whatever it is, you want to open the room to the presentation so that way you have the floor, you can present the problem to their solution. So I hope that helps. I mean, that is it in a nutshell. And if you want to try an example, feel free to reach out to me. I know I talked a little bit about calibrated questions. My next video is going to be on calibrated questions, so I'll highlight that in more detail. But I hope you enjoyed this video. Please stay in tune to my page for more content. Bye.